Alright guys, we finally have a version of Sothis that is probably much better than her defense version. I don't think there's too many people that can disagree with this, but for the most part, Halloween Sothis is a reliable way to use Sothis for you Sothis fans. And Violet, of course. Let the lesson begin.
Let the lesson begin.
What's up guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is going to talk about our brand new duo hero, which does bring some important things to talk about. Of course, this is a should you pull video, and the banner is technically already out, but hopefully you aren't impulse pulling on the first few hours of the banner and actually waiting to make an informed decision, so it does reach you there. I am going to cover the community's thoughts on this, of course, involving my Patreon, the community, the Discord and such, and you guys on YouTube on your thoughts on this banner near the end of it. Plus, I'll cover the mathematics and what a 195 duo means to the game, in my opinion, and how it may actually affect my progression as well. So, this will likely be a different video if you guys are interested in that. As someone who's like completely F2P and very goal-oriented, for the end game of FEH, it's actually quite impactful to consider what a 195 duo means to the game, and I will talk about it in a future video. However, that is going to be quite lengthy, so it is a different video, and this video will strictly focus on covering Halloween Sothis, what I feel her potential is, and the should you pull section involved with this banner. So because Sothis is the quote-unquote prize of the banner, she is going to be the focus. The other characters would be different for different reasons. Essentially, Kurtnaga is fodder for dragons, and Siros is pretty solid, but duos are worth the most in terms of talking. First of all, this type of banner is seasonal, which means you don't have a spark, which means there is gambling involved, and with that, I have to, of course, talk about the mathematics behind it, which is shown here. So there's two ways to approach seasonal banners. One is obviously you commit on Insta-View and try to potentially plus 10 or get as many merges as you can, and then wait for either the rerun the year after or a double special banner, which usually happens about half a year plus later, and then you could commit to that. However, both of those scenarios are pretty risky because one, you probably don't have orbs or you have to buy them, or B, the double special, the character may very well end up sharing with something that is far less desirable. So either way, you're in some sort of gacha gambling type of scenario, and you got to be very keen and diligent on how you want to approach this. As you can see on the left here, I tend to look at the average results and the worst case or very bad situations. That way I can set my expectations for that, and if it happens to be better, then hooray. But if you don't prepare for the worst case scenario, as soon as it happens to you, and it will happen to you, you will likely be very disappointed and could very well just quit and, you know, lose your enjoyment for the game. So always keep in mind those worst case scenarios. This is the approximation on the kind of orbs you might spend trying to pick up a single Sothis. So 50% of people, 120 orbs, and 1 in 10 people, 360 orbs. As you can see, that is quite the investment to make, and of course, there's no guarantee that you're either of those scenarios or even gonna win. So let's move on then. If you haven't already smashed the like button, please do so. Sub if you haven't already. Always helps out the channel. Let's talk about Sothis. So Sothis is essentially getting new age BST, higher stats as you can see on the left, but fairly similar to her base infantry version, having high attack and speed and decent defense and res with almost exact same HP. What is really cool about Sothis though is she has a slaying breath and she gets a bunch of stats, so that's always good. And of course, she's not actually a dragon. She doesn't qualify as one, therefore she doesn't have the same weaknesses. As a blue flying dragon, there's a couple of good things and bad things to talk about, which I want to touch on right here. First of all, let's take a look at the skill she comes with. Sirius is super synergistic with how you'd want to use Sothis, creating a 2 charge down to a 1 charge special and providing innate healing based on her speed stat and also doing more damage. Or not healing based on the speed stat, but damage based on the speed stat, and how much damage you do kind of ends up being. So it's a really nice like noontime damage type of special that you really don't want to sub out, but the fact she has a slaying breath and a solid stat spread lends well to that. However, Dragon's Wrath may not be the best B slot, and I wanted to give you guys some alternatives if you decided to use Duo Sothis as a potential carry. and she may very well work pretty well there, which we'll talk about in a moment. Before we do though, the dual skill is also worth talking about, and that's below me. Now, if you end up using Sothis in PvE content or arena and you end up merging her enough for that, considering she's 195, that's not unrealistic. You can essentially give your allies null follow-up that is based on speed, similar to Legendary Byleth, which is very powerful, by the way, especially in arena where there's a lot of worry fighter effects or bold fighter effects or anything like that, and usually these type of units will use it really well. But additionally, if you can use it in AR, which is not going to be as consistent, but if you can use it in AR, then it's going to be really good because a flyer like her doesn't normally have access to null follow-up or flyers in general. So this is a solid dual skill, assuming you can set up the right conditions for it. Let's go on to talk about the builds that I could see definitely working for her. So a couple versions here that I wanted to touch on, which is a Dragon's Ire build, the default Dragon's Wrath build, and finally for Arena. Now, first thing I want to mention for the Arena build is there is actually no version of like res trace, like lowering res, near trace, like a attack res trace or speed res trace. Those don't exist yet, and ideally that is what you would use in the B. But for Arena, I would recommend Trace because having Canto is still very powerful. Supportive nature using something like Guidance is really good, and attack speed Rain is of course really solid as well. For those of you who've actually used Sothis in Arena, she's pretty strong. Bringing in a dual hero that has null follow-up to give to others, potentially using Trace skills, she actually is going to be a solid Arena character if you ask me, if you do bring her up to +10, and maybe should potentially consider saving for her on a rerun banner if you really want to take advantage of the new age BST. Because at the end of the day, she will be the first 195 to rerun on a double special, and then we will get more later. But if you wanted to give yourself an early advantage, then Sothis I don't actually feel will be too bad of an option for those of you that are considering it. Now in terms of AR, even at lowish merges, you're going to get a lot of value out of her just by the nature of the new age stats, and of course her weapon synergizing really well with Sirius in general. Some of you may be confused why there's a B-dual flying 4 on the Dragon's Wrath version, and the reason for that is because when you have damage reduction, and that build can actually run Dragon Wall as well, so Dragon's Wrath or Dragon Wall, if you run damage reduction, or let's say Flame for example, HP is actually a very powerful stat to consider. So the more mythics you get, they're adding the HP stats, the blessings and whatnot, and then B-dual flying is actually pretty solid because it gives you 5 HP and 2 to all stats with no drawback. It's like Fury 2. It's basically an additional summoner support, to put it simply. You want a summoner support your tanks, they use all those stats. B-dual flying 4 in the A slot actually just gives you all those stats more of, and that synergizes really well with a tank like her. I've used B-dual infantry for Fjorm in AR with pretty decent success, and I feel like Sothis is actually a solid candidate as using that A skill. It just gives you all stats, and that's really nice without the drawback of recoil damage that Fury has. So if you have B-dual flying and you don't want to give it to anyone else, but you really like Sothis, I actually think that it's solid A skill. However, you don't have to go that way, and a Dragon's Ire build using her default kit, just swapping out Wrath for Ire, is pretty nice. You can bulk up her defensive stats using the new Shield Session seal, which, as I mentioned, I believe in yesterday's video with Sophia, is actually a pretty solid seal because you're going to get bare minimum about equivalent of a bracing stance effect, so 3 and 3, but it could be as good as the best seal you can get for both defense and res. So combining her with something like Flame, giving ward flyers, and of course her staff effect, you're going to be in a really nice spot to use her as a carry. At the end of the day, she doesn't really have much of a weakness besides that flyer bow effective damage, and that definitely could be a problem against stuff like Wrath or Python, which you will still occasionally see. But if you do bulk up her defense enough and use stuff like damage reduction, she can actually safely take effective damage without dying. So you can swap in like IO Shield in the Shield if you're running into many archers, but generally speaking, when you have DR, it's okay to just take effective damage. Someone like Fallen Edelgard pretty much validates this sort of approach. So there's a lot more ways to do it, and if you feel you want to share a build that you think could be really nice, then feel free to do so in the description below, or the comments rather, definitely. Alright guys, let's move into the final portion of the video, which is going to be the community's thoughts on this. So what I have noticed is that we definitely have more interest in this banner than some of the most recent ones, actually. And I feel like this is probably because of the three-house nature of the banner, or maybe dragons, but definitely some people are definitely going to be more committed here. And I'm guessing that's either because they just really like certain characters, maybe it's dual Sothis, maybe like because it's 195 BST, I don't know. You can, again, let me know in the comments below, but this is what I have here. So definitely more people interested. Anyways, first comment by Sagate says, all my orbs, Grima looks to be a great near save tank. I need more dual heroes, and Sothis looks to be a strong MP option. And Rhea looks like a solid +1, and then Dragon Wall fodder for my Faye and Noe. Also, Kurtnaga was a unit I wanted in the game for a while, so I want to try and +10 him. So this is cool because it does mean that a lot of you guys, I'm guessing, waited for these type of heroes like Kurtnaga, or something like a usable Sothis, for example, or just the upgrade in BST where it's like, okay, now we want to commit to this. So pretty hard investment, especially for just a recent banner, but if there's some solid favorites or reasons to go about it, then I can totally understand. Next up is Tristan's comment here, who says, free summon only, these units don't seem particularly meta defining, and I would like Three House banner profits to go down so they stop releasing them. True, I mean, that is a good approach. There's definitely nothing extremely meta defining here. Sothis scoring higher does impact Arena a little bit, but she isn't some sort of oppressive unit like, let's say, an NY Peony or a dual Sigurd, where you're definitely going to be like more annoyed by their presence, or dual Lift, for example. Those ones are definitely going to be defining. Sothis shouldn't be too difficult to deal with in Arena for most players, I'd say, and it's good that at least they start somewhat tame. Next up is a comment by Gay Creeper, who says, summoning for one copy of Kurtnaga, I think his weapon is really strong, and since Anna is an arena core unit of mine who could use his weapon really well, I'll throw some orbs here and hope the gacha blesses me. Yes, it's anti-immersive and I'm all for it. So it's true. The weapon is really good from Kurtnaga, and foddering him to Anna definitely doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. And definitely for you Dragon fans, Dragon users, likely going for Kurtnaga and foddering him might be a solid option. Hopefully it doesn't cost you too many orbs. Next up is a YouTube comment by Ellie Wagner, who says, definitely not. While the dragon theme is interesting, it's what they did on last year's Halloween banner, and I don't care for any of the characters on this banner. The banner also fails to introduce much of anything new other than dual Sothis' B skill, which I don't find that good. At most, I'll probably try to free summon a Rhea, as I think she, of all the units, would be the most useful to me. So Rhea does have some pretty solid fodder. The Unity skill and Dragon Wall, obviously really good. As a one-off, she can work. However, she is hard countered by something like Null Follow-Up, which you will see more and more of. So again, none of them feel super impactful. Someone like Grima, again, has too many weaknesses. So I can't really feel like any of them are going to make any sort of splash in the game besides potentially Sothis, who we will see in Arena, and a usable carry and AR offense as well. With that being said, folks, that is basically going to be my coverage on the should you pull of this banner. And at the end of the day, if you like these characters, then don't be afraid to commit, or at least consider saving for them on their reruns. Even I'm genuinely considering something like Sothis personally. Maybe they're on Hero Rises, maybe the double special has a good share. Byleth is technically there, and I am a teach, so why not, right? Would be nice. All right, anyways, guys, that's it. Comments below what you think. Let me know if this type of video style still helps you, if you like to get the thoughts and feedback of both myself covering the most important unit, and of course, yeah, that's it. Smash the like button, sub if you haven't already. If you love this content, there is a Patreon in the comments below. Consider maybe checking that out. I do put your name in the end screen, and I appreciate you guys for doing what you can. Love you all. See you in the next one.
It's over.